Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Michael Breus, the sleep doctor. We all participate in adding structure to our day through calendars, appointments, reminders. But one thing that almost nobody seems to think about is adding structure to your night. By adding structure to your night, you now gain control of your environment and you gain control of your sleep. I also want to talk to you about how to establish a great bedtime routine because it can make all the difference in the quality of your sleep. So the concept here is very simple. Sleep is not an on-off switch. There's a process that has to occur. I like to think of it kind of like this. You need runway to land the plane. So I'm going to teach you basically how to lay down the tarmac. We need to start thinking about sleep from the moment we wake up until we sleep. Now, I'm not saying that sleep should be the only thought in your day, but there are a few things that you can start doing to affect your day, which will also have a great big effect on your night. I'm going to give you 5 different effective sleeper tips that you can do. So the first one is, when should you have your first cup of coffee? I want people to hydrate before they caffeinate. It's also kind of interesting when you look at the science behind it. In order for a brain to basically pull itself out of a state of unconsciousness, it needs 2 hormones, and they have to be pretty plentiful. Adrenaline and cortisol kick into gear, and boom, you're awake. Here's the thing is, if you compare adrenaline and cortisol to caffeine, it's kind of like comparing cocaine to weak tea. So when your brain has got adrenaline and cortisol running around on it and you add some caffeine, you actually do almost no good from an alertness standpoint. But if you wait just 90 minutes, your cortisol and adrenaline naturally begin to drop. If you add caffeine during this natural drop, it actually lifts your cortisol and adrenaline. So you get a little bit more bang for your buck. So do me a favor, wait 90 minutes until after you open up your eyes to get your first cup of coffee. Part of my morning routine is getting 15 minutes of sunlight every morning. Let me explain to you why this is important and why you should be incorporating this into your morning routine. So first of all, depending upon what time you wake up, if you look at it from an eye health perspective, actually watching the sun rise across the horizon is very healthy. It helps initiate the rods and cones and gets things going in there. But if you're not that early of a riser, still getting sunlight in the morning is important. Why? Because sunlight, when it hits your eye, you have a very special cell in there called a melanopsin cell. Melanopsin cells are ones that send a signal to the brain to either release melatonin or turn it off. Sunlight sends the signal to turn off melatonin. Remember, melatonin is kind of that key that starts the engine for sleep. And so you really don't want that going on in the morning time. You want that to turn off. So before you caffeinate, you hydrate and you get a little bit of sunshine to get rid of some of that melatonin. And the other big thing that you need to do during the day is to stay physically active. If I was looking across most of the research, the easiest way to improve overall sleep quality is through physical activity. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. You don't have to run a marathon. You don't have to be a triathlete. You don't have to be a professional. None of that. We're talking about maybe 15 to 20 minutes of cardio a day, right? Now, that's probably not the only activity that you should have, but if you can do at least 15 to 20 minutes of cardio a day, the data would suggest that you're going to actually see improvements in the depth of your sleep. So tiring the body out a little during the daytime appears to have some very good consequences at night. The other big thing, stay hydrated, not just in the morning, but throughout the day. The process of sleep is one that requires the body to be hydrated. There are a lot of technical reasons why, but at the end of the day, it's important. Now, when I use a phrase like the end of the day, we do not want to be catching up on water at the end of the day. Why? Well, it's pretty obvious. It makes you wake up and pee. So what I tell people all the time is you need to kind of plan your hydration throughout your day. Now, I know this sounds like, wow, you got a lot of stuff in your schedule, Dr. Breus. Actually, it's not that hard to do. You fill up your water bottle at the beginning of the day, and by lunch, if you make sure that it's gone, you're probably in pretty good shape. But staying hydrated throughout the daytime will give you more positive sleep results at night. Then finally, when do you bookend your caffeine or when do you stop your caffeine? At the latest point, I would say it would be 2 p.m. in the afternoon. Remember, caffeine has a half-life of somewhere between 6 and 8 hours, depending upon how fast of a metabolizer you are. Either way, 6 to 8 hours is where half of that material is still in your body. Well, what does that mean? That means at 10 o'clock at night, if you had 3 cups of coffee during the day, 1.5 cups is still wandering around your brain. So stopping by 2 p.m. is the latest. If you can, maybe move it earlier to 12, and then again, maybe just keep it into the morning time. But caffeine, I would argue, is probably one of the biggest problems when it comes to falling asleep and staying asleep, and then getting into the depth of sleep that we're looking for. Now, I've told you a lot of things that you could do during the daytime, and that's important too. Remember, we got to have runway to land the plane. When we touch the plane down, we've got to have a couple things going on at night. But I also want to be clear about something. You don't have to use all the tips. Pick and choose which ones you'd like to try first. And then what I do, this is going to sound a little funky, but I do it anyway, is I call it the Habit of the Month Club. So what I do is I add one new habit each month at the beginning of the month in order to continue to move through my routines, because otherwise I add too much, it's a little overwhelming, and I don't really accomplish the things that I want to accomplish. So if you can, add one new sleep thing this month. Let me tell you what some of them are in the evening time. The big one, it's alcohol. While alcohol does make us feel sleepy, it's awful towards the middle and end of the night. And by the way, when you drink enough, you anesthetize your body. So when you go in for surgery and they stick an IV in your arm and then they pull it out and you wake up, you aren't asleep, you were unconscious. That's what alcohol does to you as well, especially when you get past 2 or 3 drinks. So if you want to have a glass of wine or a whiskey or a beer with dinner, I don't think I care. But when you go past 2 drinks, that's when the problem happens. Let's say it's 6:30 at night for dinner. And you sit down for dinner or 7 o'clock and you get your first glass of wine. Halfway through the meal, maybe you have a second glass of wine. Now you're starting to catch a little bit of a buzz. What that means is that your brain has gone toxic because alcohol is a poison and something has increased called cortisol. Remember when I was talking about cortisol a little bit earlier in the video and we were talking about how that's one of the things that wakes you up? You really don't want cortisol elevated right before bed, and that's what happens when you move past 2 drinks. So here's the best method for still being able to enjoy alcohol and get a good night's sleep. Limit your alcohol to 2 drinks. In between each drink, have a glass of water, and then give yourself 3 hours before bed. The next thing I want to talk about is exercise. Well, I told you about exercise during the daytime. There are some people who should not exercise too close to bedtime. Why is that? Well, the theory is that when you raise your core body temperature, it makes it difficult for your core body temperature to drop later on and release melatonin. Recently, some research has come out that shows that night owls, or what I like to call wolves, actually can exercise closer to bedtime than we once thought. If you're wondering what a wolf is or a night owl is, that's something called a chronotype. And if you're interested, you should check out my chrono quiz at chronoquiz.com, where you can learn a ton of stuff about your chronotype, when to exercise, when to sleep, all that kind of good stuff. But at the end of the day, you want to limit exercise for about 4 hours before bed. Next, you want to spend about 60 minutes before bed just winding down. I call this the power down hour. And so when I'm looking at a power down hour, here's how I break it down. Let's say your bedtime is 11. Set an alarm in your bedroom or on your phone for 10 p.m. So this is an alarm to remind you, hey, it's time to get ready for bed, because let's be fair, time can kind of slip away. So set that alarm as a reminder to start your bedtime routine. Now you've got this power down hour. So what do? Chop it up into 3 20-minute segments. 20 minutes for just shit you gotta do. So what I tell people all the time is this 20 minutes is last minute emails, getting clothes together, packing backpacks if you've got kids. It's basically everything that you need to do so that the morning time doesn't suck. Next, 20 minutes for hygiene. 20 minutes for hygiene here is brush your teeth, wash your face, maybe if you take a shower in the evening, something along those lines. Now, I'm gonna give you a little extra hint here, but if you wear makeup during the daytime, you shouldn't wait to remove your makeup, and here's why. Most people, when they remove their makeup, they go into the bathroom and it's very well lit, and you're basically getting bombarded with blue light, which stops melatonin production. Do me a favor and take your makeup off by 8 o'clock at night. That way you're not bombarding yourself with this blue light, and when you go in for your 20 minutes of hygiene, you can brush your teeth and then move on. The final 20 minutes is really where a lot of the magic happens. So what we find is a lot of people, when they lie in bed, it's kind of the first time that anybody has given them a break all day long. And so all the thoughts come flooding in. And quite honestly, it raises your heart rate and it raises your anxiety, and that makes it hard to sleep. So you need to do something to either distract yourself or to replace those thoughts. Personally, I like to use meditation, relaxation. Even prayer at times can be very, very helpful. Reading a book is another one. Listening to podcasts with pillow speakers. But you can do almost anything here, but it's all about positive distraction. Another big thing is checking out the conditions in your room. Now, one of the easy ones to play around with is temperature. Remember, sleeping in the colder is always better. Always better. So how does that work for some people? Well, remember, some people are hot sleepers, some people are cold sleepers. And so figuring out what's the right temperature for you becomes very, very important. The good news is you can personalize this in a few different ways. So number one, the ambient temperature in the room, somewhere in the 68 to 72 range is probably where you want it to be. If that's still not cool enough and you're feeling hot, a couple of different things that you can do. Number one, consider sleeping with less clothing on. A lot of people sleep naked or just with a t-shirt and underwear, and that allows better thermoregulation. There's a lot of data now that's starting to come out that shows that intimacy becomes more frequent when you're sleeping naked. Another thing you can do, and this is a fun one, turns out there's no hair on the bottom of your feet, so you can actually release heat much easier. So if you're hot, what I tell people to do is don't wear socks and keep your feet out from under the covers. If you like to stay warm, put socks on and put your feet under the covers. And then I have one final little hack from a temperature standpoint. If your partner just can't handle it being any colder, one of the things I like to do is you take a water bottle like this, stick it in the freezer, freeze it solid, and then put it into a tube sock. Have one on each side of your hips. So it's great because it actually cools your core body down without disturbing your bed partner. So that's a way that you can have a little mini air conditioner inside your bed if you need it. Okay, couple of other things that you might want to do. And again, remember, these are all options. One of the things I like to do is put a notepad on the bedside table. I'm trying to record my dreams these days, and I'm learning more about dream therapy. So I have a notepad and I try to write things down as soon as I wake up. A lot of people tell me that they get these phenomenal ideas about their business or their life right when they're falling asleep. So having a notepad by your bedside table and you can scribble out a few lines to get it out of your head is probably something that's going to be quite helpful. So there's lots of people out there who like to sleep with the TV on. I think I might be the only sleep doctor in the universe that says it's okay to sleep with the TV on. So what I view TV as is passive positive distraction. So when you're lying in bed watching TV, the content is just kind of flowing over you. You're not really actively engaging with the content, but you really want to avoid tablets and you really want to avoid your phone. Now, a lot of people turn to me and they're like, but Dr. Breus, my alarm is on my phone. Bullshit. Go someplace, buy an analog alarm clock and bring it with you. You don't have to have your phone next to you because here's what happens. Somebody wakes up in the middle of the night, they reach over and grab their phone, and now you're done. You're off and running, scrolling, doing something else. You're getting bright light and you're not sleeping. So I'm okay with TV, but I'm not okay with tablets and I'm not okay with telephones. If I had to pick one thing that you did that was going to be the most helpful for your sleep, it actually has to do with your waking up, and that's sticking to a consistent wake up time. Now, I want you to base this on something called your chronotype, but the consistency of the wake up time turns out to be really important because it gives you consistency for all circadian processes in your body. Michael, what does that mean? You have almost 300 circadian clocks in your body. So by waking up at the same time every day, they all stay consistent. Now, let's say that you're following all these recommendations, but you really do want to get a little bit more understanding of something that you could take that might be helpful for sleep. So most people in the world, believe it or not, are deficient in magnesium. I've got a couple of videos here on YouTube about magnesium that you may want to look at, but here is a recipe I want to give you where you can add magnesium to your routine and it tastes pretty delicious. It's called banana tea. Now I want to be clear, there's no tea in this, there's no caffeine, and the only ingredient is a banana and water. So take a banana, cut off the tip, cut off the stem, cut it in half, leave the peel on it and the fruit in it. Would you believe me if I told you that 3 times the amount of magnesium is in the skin, not in the fruit of the banana? We actually call bananas nature sleeping pills because they're so loaded with magnesium that they really help people fall asleep. But all I've asked you to do so far is wash off the outside of the banana and take the 2 halves, right? Now I want you to drop them into some boiling water, maybe 5-6 minutes or until the banana turns brown. And then I want you to steep it out and drink the water, okay? So far, you've got boiled banana water. That's all I'm asking you to do. You can add a little honey or a little cinnamon to taste if you want, but this will actually do a couple of different things. It gives you a bunch of magnesium and it gives you a pretty big boost of sugar. This type of recipe of banana tea would not be appropriate for somebody with diabetes, somebody who's keto, or somebody who's really avoiding sugar at this particular time. If you're looking for a drink that have before bed like that, you might want to consider something like matcha or guava leaf tea. Guava leaf tea does all the same things with almost no caffeine in it, so that could be a great alternative as well. But I like the banana tea personally Now, I will warn you, you gotta really like bananas. As my daughter says, Dad, it's very banana-y. But I really believe in setting up your bedtime routine can actually make the difference between a good night of sleep and a really crappy night of sleep. And by the way, we have links to all of the references I used to develop this process. So do me a favor, check that out in the description as well. But if you do find yourself waking up in the middle of the night, I have one of my most popular videos on how to fall back to sleep in the middle of the night right here. Let me know in the comments if you stick to your bedtime routine and if you found this helpful. This is Dr. Michael Breus, the Sleep Doctor, wishing you a happy bedtime routine.